stop. Listen carefully and watch till end. It's a treasure for all people, especially for old retired persons who can find one coin and become rich. What if one of these 8 Washington quarters has been sitting unnoticed for decades, waiting for someone to recognize the tiny detail that could make it far more interesting than its 25-cent face value? Today we're examining 8 Washington quarters from different years, and every single one has a story worth discovering. But don't make the mistake of thinking that an old date automatically means a fortune. With these coins, the real mystery is in the mint mark, condition, strike, errors, varieties, and preservation. So keep watching, because after each coin will reveal a potential collector value point, and by the end you may look at your old quarters very differently. Our first coin is the 1965 Washington quarter. This year is especially interesting because 1965 was the first year Washington quarters were struck in the new copper-nickel-clad composition after the United States moved away from silver quarters for regular circulation. That makes the 1965 quarter an important transition coin in American coinage history. But here's where things get interesting. Not every 1965 quarter is automatically rare or valuable. You need to inspect the coin carefully. Look at the date, surfaces, edge, strike, and overall condition. Because 1965 was the beginning of the clad era, collectors also pay attention to unusual pieces, including errors and varieties. If you ever find a 1965 quarter that looks dramatically different from a normal example, don't immediately spend it. Examine it closely and consider having it authenticated. For an ordinary circulated 1965 quarter, the value may remain relatively modest, but an unusual high-grade or authenticated error example can be much more interesting. For our first value checkpoint, let's use around $500+ as a possible value for an exceptional example, not a guaranteed price. The important question is not simply, is it from 1965? It's, what makes this particular 1965 quarter different? Now we move to our second coin, the 1967 Washington quarter. This quarter comes from another fascinating period in U.S. coinage. Like the 1965 issue, it belongs to the early clad era, when the mint was producing quarters without the traditional 90% silver composition used on earlier Washington quarters. That historical transition makes the date worth remembering, but once again the date alone doesn't create a huge value. Condition becomes extremely important. A heavily circulated 1967 quarter may have worn lettering, flattened design details, and scratches from years of use. A sharply preserved example is a completely different story. And then there's the possibility of unusual minting characteristics. Collectors look for genuine errors, varieties, strong strikes, and coins with exceptional preservation. So if you have a 1967 quarter, check the edge, examine Washington's portrait, look closely around the lettering, and inspect the reverse for anything unusual. Don't polish it, don't clean it, and don't damage the original surface. For our second value checkpoint, an exceptional collectible example could potentially be around $300+, depending on its exact characteristics and grade. Remember, that number is only an illustrative possibility, not the expected value of every 1967 quarter. The real treasure is discovering whether yours has something special. Our third coin is the 1968 Washington quarter, and now we're getting into another date that deserves a careful inspection. By this period, the clad quarter had become part of everyday American life, and millions of quarters were circulating across the country. But the coins that survived in excellent condition can attract more collector attention. Look closely at the details around Washington's hair, the lettering, the eagle, and the rim. Then inspect the edge and search for anything that doesn't look normal. If you notice unusual doubling, an off-center strike, missing details, an abnormal edge, or another genuine minting error, don't assume it's damage. At the same time, be careful because scratches, dents, machine damage, and ordinary wear can sometimes look like errors to beginners. That's why authentication matters. A normal 1968 quarter might not be a major treasure, but a rare error or exceptional specimen could be considerably more desirable. And this is where the hunt becomes exciting. You're not looking for an old coin, you're looking for an unusual coin. For our third value checkpoint, let's put a potential $1,000 on a truly exceptional authenticated example with the right combination of rarity and condition. The exact value could be much lower or higher depending on what you actually have. So before you dismiss that 1968 quarter, take another look. Our fourth coin is the 1987 Washington quarter. At first you might think a coin from the 1980s is far too recent to be interesting. But that assumption can be dangerous when searching for errors in high-grade coins. Modern coins can also contain minting mistakes, and collectors actively search for unusual examples. The key is knowing what normal looks like. Examine Washington's portrait, the lettering, the date, the reverse eagle, and especially the edge. Look for genuine abnormalities rather than simple damage from circulation. A quarter with scratches or dents from years of use generally isn't the same thing as a mint error. But an authenticated minting error can attract collector attention. High-grade examples can also become interesting when they have exceptional surfaces and sharp details. For our fourth value checkpoint, imagine that this 1987 quarter has an unusual authenticated characteristic and strong preservation. A potential value of $750+ could become possible in an exceptional case, although ordinary examples may be worth only their face value or a modest premium. That's the lesson with modern-looking coins. Never assume that newer automatically means worthless. Now we reach our fifth quarter, the 1970 Washington quarter. This is where your inspection should become even more serious. The early 1970s were a fascinating period for American coinage, and collectors pay close attention to dates, mint marks, condition, and unusual characteristics. Start with the date and mint mark. Then examine the coin under good lighting. Does the design look sharply struck? Are the surfaces clean and original? Are there scratches, discoloration, or signs that someone has cleaned it? If the coin has been altered or heavily damaged, that can hurt its collectible appeal. But if you discover a genuine mint error or an especially desirable variety, the situation can change dramatically. The biggest mistake is assuming that every online claim about a rare 1970 quarter is true. Always compare the exact coin against reliable references and, for potentially valuable pieces, seek professional authentication. For our fifth value checkpoint, let's imagine a genuinely unusual and authenticated 1970 quarter reaching around $1,500+ in a strong market. Again, this is an illustrative high-end possibility, not a claim that every 1970 quarter is worth thousands. The exact coin tells the story. Our sixth coin is the 1973 Washington quarter. By now, you should understand the basic rule of the treasure hunt. Date first, mint mark second, condition third, and then look for varieties and errors. The 1973 quarter is another coin where the average circulated example may not be extremely valuable, but an unusual specimen can deserve attention. Examine the coin's rims and lettering carefully. Look for signs of an off-center strike or other genuine minting anomaly. Check the surfaces for unusual characteristics, but remember that damage after the coin left the mint is not the same as a mint error. This distinction is critical. Collectors don't simply pay for anything that looks strange, they pay for recognized and authenticated characteristics. And if your 1973 quarter has excellent preservation, that can also make it more interesting. So what could our sixth coin potentially be worth? Let's use around $600+ as an illustrative value for an exceptional collectible example. The actual value depends on the precise variety, mint mark, grade, authentication, and current collector demand. So if your 1973 quarter looks ordinary, don't be disappointed. The real question is whether it contains a detail that separates it from the millions of ordinary coins. Our seventh quarter is from 1977, and this is another reminder that valuable coins don't always look ancient. A quarter from the late 1970s can still become collectible because of an unusual error, variety, or exceptional grade. Take a close look at the coin's date and mint mark, then examine the rim and edge. Pay attention to the lettering and the eagle on the reverse. Does anything look doubled, missing, unusually positioned, or dramatically different from a normal example? If so, don't clean the coin, don't scrape it, don't try to improve it. Preserve it exactly as you found it and get a qualified opinion. Also remember that the condition of the coin matters. A pristine-looking coin with minimal marks can be much more desirable than one that spent decades in circulation. For our 7th value checkpoint, we'll use around $400+ as a possible high-end figure for an exceptional and properly authenticated example. But again, don't confuse a potential value with a guaranteed appraisal. The exciting part is discovering what you actually have. And now we reach our 8th and final Washington quarter, the 1979. This is the coin I want you to inspect with the biggest question in your mind. What if this one has the detail everyone else missed? The 1979 quarter is not automatically a rare fortune simply because of its age, but that doesn't mean you should ignore it. Search for the mint mark, examine the date, study the surfaces, and compare the design against a normal example. Look for genuine minting errors and recognized varieties. Pay special attention to the condition because a sharply preserved coin can be much more interesting to collectors. And remember one of the most important rules in coin collecting: never clean a potentially valuable coin. Cleaning can permanently alter the surface and potentially reduce its desirability. If something looks unusual, preserve it and seek an expert opinion. For our final value checkpoint, let's imagine an exceptional, authenticated 1979 quarter with a desirable error or variety reaching around $1,000. That doesn't mean every 1979 quarter is worth $1. It means the right characteristics can potentially transform an ordinary-looking quarter into something much more interesting. And now the 8-coin hunt is over, but your search may only be beginning. We looked at the 1965, 1967, 1968, 1970, 1973, 1977, and 1979 Washington quarters, and there is one lesson that matters more than all the potential prices combined. Never judge an old coin by its face value or its age alone. A quarter is only worth 25 cents as money, but a collectible coin can be valued very differently depending on rarity, condition, mint mark, variety, error, grade, authentication, and demand. So if you have these dates sitting in a jar, drawer, collection, or old family box, take them out and inspect them carefully. Use good lighting. Look at the date and mint mark. Study the edge, and compare unusual features against trusted numismatic references. And if you think you've discovered something genuinely rare, don't clean it, get it professionally examined. Because the most exciting part of coin collecting isn't knowing that rare coins exist. It's the possibility that the next unusual coin you discover could be sitting quietly in your own hands. So before you spend that quarter, ask yourself one final question. What if this is the one everyone else overlooked? If you enjoyed this Washington quarter treasure hunt, subscribe to Minted Million Coins. Turn on notifications, and stay with us because the next old coin we examine could be hiding an even bigger surprise.